The 26th of January, 1934, 8:17 a.m., Berlin. The winter air bites like steel against bare skin. Frost coats the edges of the Reich Chancellery's marble steps. Smoke curls from coal stoves in neighboring buildings, mixing with the sharp scent of burning wood and wet stone. Footsteps echo in deserted streets, each one hesitant, hurried. The city seems calm, almost still. But beneath the apparent order, tension simmers. There is a sense that something irreversible is unfolding, something that will reshape not only Germany but the very idea of democracy itself. Inside the Chancellery, hallways are quiet, save for the occasional shuffle of papers and the distant murmur of secretaries preparing reports. Adolf Hitler moves briskly between offices, his expression taut, eyes scanning faces for reaction. Outside, the nation is frozen, but inside, power is fluid, shifting with every decision, every whispered conversation, every strategic calculation to be why the morning of January 26, 1934, Hitler has already begun consolidating his control over the Reich in ways that will make federal structures largely ceremonial. The law for the reconstruction of the Reich, recently passed, centralizes authority, stripping the states, Bavaria, Prussia, Saxony, and others, of their autonomous powers. Governors are now beholden to Berlin, reporting directly to the Chancellor. Ministries that once reflected regional interests now obey one voice, the Führer. Yet outside of Berlin, life continues with a fragile normality. Streets hum with trams and horse-drawn wagons. Shopkeepers sweep sidewalks, their breath misting in the cold. Families line up at bakeries for bread, oblivious or perhaps too exhausted to question the rapid erosion of their freedoms. Unemployment remains painfully high, hovering around 3 million according to official statistics, figures carefully manipulated by the regime. Yet wages stagnate, and shortages of essential goods, from coal to textiles, are beginning to pinch ordinary citizens. Meanwhile, on January 26, Germany signs the German-Polish Non Aggression Pact. Newspapers across Europe flash the news in stark headlines. Germany and Poland pledge non-aggression, they read. Diplomats in London and Paris frown. A handshake on paper, they think, masking the grinding machinery of rearmament already underway. Factories hum, hidden under the cloak of diplomacy, producing tanks, rifles, and aircraft destined to challenge international treaties. The world watches cautiously, sensing unease but unable to fully grasp the depth of Germany's ambitions. Inside the Reich, tension is also building among Hitler's own ranks. The SA, led by Ernst Röhm, presses for a people's militia, a paramilitary force that would place stormtroopers alongside, or even above, the Reichswehr, Germany's professional army. Röhm's demands are more than political, they are a threat. The Reichswehr, with its entrenched hierarchy and loyalty to the German state rather than the party, views the SA as reckless, dangerous, and ultimately a challenge to military authority. Hitler faces a critical choice: side with the army or empower the stormtroopers. Choosing the Reichswehr signals not weakness but calculated foresight, a move that will later justify the purge known as the *** Night of the Long Knives. Across the city, Heinrich Himmler works quietly to expand the SS, embedding loyalty tests, intelligence networks, and surveillance deep within the fabric of society. Joseph Goebbels refines propaganda campaigns, ensuring that the narrative of unity, order, and national rebirth saturates every newspaper, every speech, every poster. Even historic liberal publications like the Vossische Zeitung, which had chronicled Germany's democratic experiment for over a century, vanish under the weight of censorship and intimidation. Silence spreads where debate once thrived. Economic pressures intertwine with political maneuvering. Statistics are massaged to show recovery. Unemployment falls even as families struggle. Wages are frozen, prices rise, and shortages tighten daily life. Foreign currency reserves dwindle. The economy teeters, yet the regime presents an image of stability, control, and inevitability. Citizens, exhausted by years of depression and political chaos, begin to trade liberty for security, trusting promises of order even as power centralizes in fewer hands. Inside the Chancellery, Hitler convenes a small circle of advisors. Maps, charts, and reports litter a large oak table. Each man leans over papers illuminated by the soft glow of an oil lamp. Every calculation is precise. Every decision carries enormous risk. Hitler knows that consolidating power means alienating some factions while co-opting others. Röhm's essay cannot be ignored, but neither can the Reichswehr. Himmler's growing SS offers a solution, a loyal internal enforcer capable of both intimidation and bureaucratic efficiency. The gears of a totalitarian state begin to mesh silently, inexorably outside. Berlin itself is a stage. Soldiers march in rehearsed formations. Black uniformed men of the SA patrol streets with a sense of entitlement and menace. Citizens watch from windows, uncertain, some secretly anxious, others silently approving. The rhythm of everyday life continues, trams, bakeries, markets, but it now pulses to a new drumbeat, a drumbeat of centralized authority, surveillance, and the looming presence of an empowered party apparatus. January 1934 also brings subtle warnings of foreign entanglements. Diplomatic cables hint at tension with neighboring states. Poland, reassured on paper by the pact, remains wary. Britain and France exchange notes of concern, yet the full implications of Germany's internal consolidation remain unclear to the international community. Hitler, however, operates with strategic patience, understanding that power is as much about timing as it is about force. By the end of the first week of this quarter, the outlines of a new Germany are visible. Federalism exists only in name. Media voices that questioned policy vanish. Military authority is carefully balanced to prevent rebellion while preserving loyalty. Propaganda saturates the public imagination, turning crisis into narrative, manipulation into consensus. And while unemployment statistics hint at recovery, ordinary citizens experience a precarious daily reality, feeling both the promise and the oppression of the emerging regime. In offices, coffeehouses, and party headquarters, the tension of competing ambition simmers. Röhm's essay watches the Reichswehr with suspicion. Himmler's SS grows ever more capable, ever more omnipresent. Goebbels' words shape perception faster than reality can respond. And Hitler, at the center, orchestrates the balance of fear, loyalty, and ambition with a meticulous, almost surgical precision. Yet even as Germany appears ordered, the undercurrents of crisis swirl beneath the surface. How long can loyalty be bought with fear? How long before ambition and ideology collide? What subtle miscalculations might ripple into catastrophe? The stage is set, but the actors are still moving, each step deliberate, each choice consequential, and the consequences of these early months of 1934 will echo far beyond Berlin, far beyond the Reich, shaping the path of Europe in ways few can yet imagine. February 1934, early morning, Munich. Fog lies thick in narrow streets, curling around gas lamps and the darkened facades of buildings that once echoed with vibrant debate. The smell of damp stone mixes with coal smoke from chimneys, and the faint metallic tang of frost lingers in the air. Footsteps crunch on icy pavements as party men hurry past, briefcases in hand, papers rattling, voices hushed. Somewhere nearby, the distant clatter of boots announces another patrol, a reminder that order in this city is no longer voluntary. Inside local party offices, Ernst Röhm meets with SA leaders. Their conversation is tense, charged with ambition and frustration. Röhm's vision is clear, a people's militia capable of enforcing party ideology across the nation, one that could rival the professional army. He argues it is the future, that the Reichswehr's old loyalties are an obstacle to the National Socialist project. Around him, men nod, their enthusiasm masking the danger that lurks in challenging the military hierarchy. But Hitler's decision is already weighing in secret. The Reichswehr must be appeased. Professional soldiers, steeped in tradition and bound by oaths, cannot be allowed to fracture or rebel. Loyalty is bought with promises of respect, positions, and carefully controlled authority. The balance is delicate. One misstep could ignite civil conflict within the party and the state itself. And Hitler, understanding the stakes, chooses the army over Rome. It is a calculated risk, a quiet assertion that power flows not from chaos but from carefully managed hierarchy. Meanwhile, Heinrich Himmler continues to expand the SS quietly but methodically. Officers across Germany report directly to him, networks of intelligence and surveillance growing without fanfare. SS men are stationed in cities, towns, and rural districts, tasked with monitoring not just opposition but also party members themselves. Loyalty is constantly tested, and dissent is noted. Every report, every observation, is funneled upward to Berlin, reinforcing the center of power while eroding potential threats at the periphery. Joseph Goebbels, at the Ministry of Propaganda, refines messaging to a razor's edge. Newspapers, radio broadcasts, posters, every medium is carefully calibrated. Even subtle language is scrutinized. Order, unity, security, these words become weapons. The narrative is controlled so completely that citizens begin to accept reality as the regime defines it. Historic liberal voices disappear. The Vossische Zeitung, once a bastion of independent thought, ceases publication. Its silence is more than symbolic. It is a warning. Abroad, the German-Polish Non Aggression Pact sends ripples through European capitals. Diplomats in Paris, London, and Warsaw react with cautious optimism. But the reality behind the agreement is far more complex. Germany continues rearmament behind a diplomatic mask. Factories hum. Aircraft roll off assembly lines. Tanks are tested in secret, and soldiers train under the cover of routine exercises. The world sees a peaceful gesture on paper, while Berlin quietly lays the foundation for future military action. Inside the Reich, economic pressures intensify. Unemployment statistics appear to fall, but these numbers are manipulated. Wage freezes, rationing, and shortages mask the reality of the population struggle. Coal and food remain scarce in many regions, and the specter of foreign currency shortages threatens trade. Citizens sense scarcity but are persuaded through propaganda that these hardships are temporary and necessary for national rebirth. Fear and hope intertwine, creating a sense of obedience that is both voluntary and coerced. Tensions between the SA and the Reichswehr escalate in subtle ways. Reports reach Berlin of confrontations at barracks, of training exercises pushing the boundaries of authority. Rome continues to press for his militia, using both rhetoric and intimidation. The professional army, aware of its strategic advantage, resists publicly and privately. Hitler mediates with precision. He cannot allow either faction to dominate fully. The result is a delicate equilibrium, maintained with constant attention to detail, persuasion, and threats barely implied but widely understood. In mid-February, Hitler's inner circle meets to plan broader consolidation. Himmler's SS, Goebbels' propaganda apparatus, and the loyal wings of the Reichswehr coordinate with unprecedented precision. Intelligence gathered by the Gestapo informs every move. Decisions once reserved for debate among ministers are now centralized in a small group around Hitler himself. Power becomes a living organism, concentrated, agile, and ruthlessly efficient. Meanwhile, ordinary Germans live largely unaware of the machinations reshaping their world. Factories continue production, schools operate under new curricula emphasizing loyalty and ideology, and city streets maintain an orderly facade. Yet beneath this surface, fear is palpable. Citizens adjust behavior preemptively. They avoid political conversation. They pray speeches they do not fully believe. They attend rallies with a mixture of hope and apprehension. Survival increasingly depends on compliance, on reading the unspoken rules, on interpreting signals of loyalty and danger. By late February, early signs of the purge are taking shape. High-ranking SA officials are subtly sidelined. Military exercises test the loyalty of both officers and enlisted men. SS operatives infiltrate party and government offices, observing, recording, and reporting. The stage is being set for a moment that will redefine power in Germany forever, a moment in which obedience, loyalty, and ambition intersect violently. Even as these preparations unfold, Hitler maintains his public persona. Speeches celebrate unity, prosperity, and the resurgence of German pride. Images of a nation progressing dominate newspapers and radio. Yet the reality behind closed doors is starkly different. Competition for influence, simmering resentment, and the quiet hum of surveillance dictate the rhythm of daily life in the capital. Every handshake, every nod, every whispered comment is measured, analyzed, and remembered, and then, as winter begins its retreat, Whispers of action circulate among the party elite. Rumors of imminent reshuffling, arrests, and enforcement measures spark fear even in those who considered themselves untouchable. Questions begin to circulate silently. Which allies will survive the coming purge? Which ambitions will be crushed? How far will loyalty be tested before the final decisions are made? The tension is palpable. Berlin is both alive and trapped. Power is concentrated yet precarious. Every participant, from Hitler to Röhm, Himmler to Goebbels, knows the stakes. Decisions made in these months will reverberate for decades. The facade of order hides the ticking clock of decisive action, a storm gathering quietly, invisibly, over the German state, and somewhere in the corridors of power, the question lingers. When ambition, ideology, and loyalty collide, who will stand? Who will fall? And how will the world respond when the full measure of Hitler's centralization of power becomes undeniable? The 30th of June, 1934, 03, 17 a.m., Berlin night hangs heavy over the city, thick and suffocating. Fog curls along cobblestone streets, muffling footsteps and distant traffic. The smell of coal smoke mixes with wet stone and a faint metallic tang in the air. Lights flicker behind curtained windows. Somewhere, a clock ticks loudly, echoing in silent hallways. This night will change Germany forever. Inside the Reich Chancellery, Adolf Hitler sits with his closest advisors, the weight of imminent action pressing down like the winter frost outside. Maps are spread across tables. Names are checked twice. Orders are finalized. Every move, every arrest, every execution is meticulously calculated. This is not chaos, it is strategy. But it is also ruthlessness. The SA, once the vanguard of the party, is the target. Ernst Röhm, its leader, had pressed too far, openly challenging the army and threatening to restructure Germany's military hierarchy. Hitler had promised loyalty to the Reichswehr. Now, those promises are about to be enforced with deadly precision. By 4 a.m., SS units and Gestapo squads move silently through Berlin, their presence almost invisible under the cover of night. Doors are broken, alarms are muffled, and key SA leaders are arrested. The streets are eerily quiet, yet tension crackles in the air like electricity. Orders are executed with efficiency. Obedience is unquestioned. Every step is synchronized, every report communicated, every action pre-planned. Röhm himself is apprehended in his residence. Reports vary on the conversation, but all accounts agree on one thing: a confrontation, brief and tense, that ends with his removal. Across the country, SA units are neutralized, imprisoned, or absorbed into other organizations. The militia that threatened to rival the Reichswehr is dismantled almost overnight. Meanwhile, Heinrich Himmler's SS consolidates its role as the internal enforcer. Offices and bureaus that once reported to the SA now answer to Himmler directly. Surveillance intensifies, and a network of informants spreads through cities, towns, and even rural villages. Loyalty to Hitler and the party becomes the ultimate test of survival. Propaganda, curated by Joseph Goebbels, ensures that the public perceives these actions as necessary, as a cleansing of disorder for the good of the nation. The narrative is simple, direct, and compelling. Germany has been saved from internal chaos economically. The regime leverages the purge to strengthen its grip. Labor policies are enforced more strictly. Wage freezes remain. Unemployment statistics are polished to suggest improvement, and shortages are managed with the appearance of careful planning rather than coercion. Citizens, already conditioned by propaganda and fear, begin to accept centralized control as inevitable, even desirable. The international community reacts cautiously. Foreign newspapers report the arrests and killings, but diplomatic responses are muted. Many European powers are preoccupied with their own economic crises and political instability. Yet the signal is clear. Hitler has demonstrated that he will not tolerate internal opposition, that power is now concentrated decisively in one office. Within Germany, the consequences are immediate and profound. The Reichswehr feels reassured. Röhm's challenge is neutralized. The SA, once a force capable of intimidation and political leverage, is rendered subordinate. The SS rises in influence, shaping intelligence, policing, and internal security. Hitler himself emerges as the undisputed authority, his centralization of power now absolute. Federal structures remain only in name. Debate, dissent, and opposition are no longer tolerated. By the end of July 1934, Germany appears calm on the surface, but beneath the order is a state transformed. Power is concentrated, surveillance is pervasive, and obedience is both enforced and expected. Citizens move through streets lined with flags and banners, unaware of the depth of control embedded in every institution, every office, every school. Fear and loyalty coexist uneasily, yet the facade of stability reassures many that life continues as normal. The lessons of this period extend beyond the immediate purge. The centralization of power demonstrates the effectiveness of combining propaganda, surveillance, and selective violence. The ability to manipulate perception while consolidating authority becomes a blueprint for authoritarian governance. Military loyalty is ensured not only through promises and structure but also through decisive action against potential rivals. Information is controlled, dissent is silenced, and the state projects inevitability. Even decades later, historians and political analysts reflect on this critical moment: how quickly democracy can be dismantled when order becomes a justification for permanent power. They examine the chilling efficiency with which legal frameworks, propaganda, and selective violence can transform a fragile democracy into a centralized autocracy, and yet, amid all the strategy, the plans, and the calculations, there is a human dimension that cannot be ignored. The lives lost, the families destroyed, the fear instilled in millions. These are the shadows that linger long after the legal and political transformations are complete. They remind us that power is not abstract. It is exercised by people, with consequences that ripple through generations. By the close of 1934, Hitler's Germany stands transformed, centralized, controlled, and poised for the next stages of expansion and aggression. Federalism is dead. Independent media is silent. Ambitious party factions are tamed. And the machinery of totalitarian rule, once only emerging, is now fully operational. The world outside watches, sometimes knowing, sometimes oblivious. The mechanisms of control, once subtle, now dominate daily life. Citizens adapt, comply, or vanish from history's record. Orders are absolute. Power is concentrated. And the question remains: what warning signs did the world ignore when order was wielded as the instrument of permanent authority? Germany's experiment in centralized power is complete, for now. But the echoes of 1934 will reverberate across Europe and the world, influencing the course of conflict, the structure of states, and the understanding of how democracy can fall quietly, incrementally, and with chilling efficiency. The night of the purge ends. Berlin sleeps, silent and frostbound. Yet the lessons of fear, ambition, and control linger far beyond the city, far beyond the Reich. And history reminds us, those who serve power sometimes find themselves consumed by it, leaving the question unanswered: how far can order justify domination, and at what cost to freedom, humanity, and conscience?